On the fateful day of May 23, 1985, a Kansas City teenager seemingly vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a void that has endured for decades. Today, we step back into the mid-1980s to explore the events and mystery surrounding this heartbreaking case. This is the story of Jody Ledkins. Not much is publicly known about Jody's life prior to her disappearance. Her mother, Karen Stratton, has described Jody's home life as dysfunctional, but denies any abuse took place. "We're not the Beaver Cleaver family," Karen stated during a 1994 interview, and the family wasn't always stable, moving at least 4 times before Jody was 14. However, Karen believed she had a good relationship with Jody. The mid-1980s marked a period of economic recovery for the United States following the recession of the early 80s. Having been re-elected in 1984, Ronald Reagan was serving as president. Personal computers were becoming more widespread, and the development of the Internet was underway, although it was still in its early stages. The AIDS epidemic gained attention, and geopolitical tensions, including the Cold War between the United States and Soviet Union, were dominating the news. Jody's disappearance occurred at a time of both societal advancement and global challenges, providing a backdrop that may have influenced the investigation and the events surrounding her case. At the end of her mother's second marriage, Jody's parents, who had divorced prior to 1981, got back together. This brought more tension into the household, and Jody began skipping school. She had also previously run away from home 3 times. A year prior to her disappearance, after an incident where she had pushed a security guard, Jody had been assigned a juvenile caseworker. On the day she disappeared, Jody and her friend Melissa Folscroft skipped school, spending the day at Melissa's home located near East 14th Street and Winchester Avenue. Later that evening, Jody and Melissa walked to the home of Jody's boyfriend in the 700 block of Cambridge Avenue, about a 15-minute walk. At some point, Jody argued with her boyfriend, and she and Melissa headed back to Melissa's home on foot. At 10 p.m., Jody called her mother and asked for a ride back home to Topping Avenue in the East Bottoms. Jody's home was just under 2 miles away from Melissa's house, much too far to walk at night. Her mother didn't have a car readily available, so Jody told her mother she would find a ride with a friend. By all accounts, Jody did not have any money with her to pay for bus fare. Shortly after that call, Jody left Melissa's house walking north on Winchester Avenue, which was in the opposite direction from her home. Melissa was under the impression Jody was headed back to the boyfriend's house. She was never seen again. When Jody had not returned home by the following morning, her mother reported her missing to Jody's juvenile caseworker. This caseworker, suggesting that Jody was upset about something, advised her mother to give Jody the weekend to cool off. This bit of advice ultimately wrecked the entire case, as the first 48 hours when a person goes missing are the most essential. The caseworker did prepare 2 warrants for Jody, citing her as an endangered juvenile who should be taken into police custody if found. 2 years later, Karen would learn that the police were never notified that Jody was missing. In 1987, after finally being notified of the teen's disappearance, law enforcement considered Jody a missing person and most probably a runaway. As a result, clues were minimal by the time the investigation began. It is unclear whether any investigative efforts were made until a strange event happened in 1989. It was then that Jody's former caseworker received a strange letter from an individual claiming to be Jody. The letter states that she is okay, but doesn't explain why she left. When the handwriting was compared to a previous letter Jody wrote, her mother was uncertain if the handwriting matched. Why a professional handwriting analysis wasn't done to verify the authenticity of the letter remains a mystery. In 1993, Jody's mother began receiving bizarre telephone calls. The calls would continue off and on for 2 years. Sometimes the caller would demand money in exchange for Jody. Jody's mother recorded all the calls and turned them over to the Kansas City Police Department. The police did make transcripts of all the calls and triangulated the calls to a payphone in Kansas City. However, the caller was never identified. In April 1997, Jody's case was officially reclassified from a missing person to a homicide. The previous October, federal and local officers had gone to the now vacant home of Jody's boyfriend looking for any signs of a murder. They searched the nearby woods for any sign of a grave. Of course, it's 11 years after the fact, so what are you going to find? Sergeant Pete Endlin told a Kansas City Star reporter in 1997. That same year, 2 prison inmates claimed they had information regarding Jody's disappearance. This would lead Kansas City detectives to use sonar equipment to search the Missouri River for a vehicle in which her body was said to be placed. The Missouri State Water Patrol, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers focused on 2 launch areas in Riverfront Park and a 3rd location near the Missouri 291 bridge. No vehicle or other evidence of Jody was ever found. Later, authorities would report they thought these 2 inmates had given false information. Jody Lee Ledkins was just 14 years old when she disappeared that spring day in 1985. As of the filming of this video, she would be 53. Jody's mother has claimed publicly that Jody may have deliberately chosen to leave. While investigators have considered this theory, in a 1987 interview with the Kansas City Star, now retired detective Jack Quirk stated, "She just doesn't fit our pattern. Most runaways are back home within 72 hours, but I haven't found anyone who has had any contact with her. It's possible she's out there and wants to be missing. She just hasn't been seen." Sergeant Undlin echoed Quirk's opinion in a 1994 interview, saying, "Jody's case doesn't fit the pattern of runaways who are usually found in days, if not weeks." Authorities stated they believe that Jody likely died around the same time she disappeared and was probably killed at the hands of a murderer. They also announced they had a suspect in her disappearance, but declined to publicly identify them. As of the filming of this video, there have been no new leads in Jody's disappearance. In 2020, the Kansas City Police Department made a public plea via social media for information. If you have any information on the disappearance of Jody Lee Ledkins, please contact the Kansas City Police Department at 816-234-5140.